everyone. My name is Yevgeny. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders of DIMO Network. So today, going to be talking about something slightly different that I think what a lot of folks are doing. Going to dive really deep into cars. So at its core, what DIMO is solving is the fact that you keep hearing the story that cars make all this data, but no one's ever seen it. And the reason for that is it's all siloed, usually within the automaker. Here it's Hyundai and Kia. In Michigan, in the US, it's Ford and GM, but also Uber and Lyft is in a lot of cars, and they are also collecting all this data. And the most important part of it all is the person who owns the car is spending a lot of money on that car, and they don't have access to any of this data to make good decisions on it. The second part of it is automotive is very, very low trust. When people go to the dealership, they don't trust the dealership. When you're talking to your insurance company, neither party trusts the other side. And the whole time, the data that your car is producing is getting leaked all over the web and being used against you. So what we're trying to do is solve this problem with an open ecosystem approach. You can think of it as blockchain or Linux Foundation, but at its core, we have a community of 15,000 people who are hacking on cars. They are building apps, and we're bringing all these communities together into one place. So to say, we're building really a protocol for mobility, and we're starting with really because the car is the second most expensive thing people buy after their house. And our inspiration obviously was in the early days, Bitcoin, then Ethereum, and most recently Helium. I think Helium really proved that you could go to market and launch this huge protocol with very low cost. Putting it in terms that I think more people are familiar with, because most people don't think of apps and cars or data in cars very often. The car is stuck at the kind of 2005, 2006. So if in 2005, 2006, you had a Nokia phone, you had to go talk to the carrier. Everybody had to sit in the boardroom and approve it, and nothing got built until the iPhone came out. And some people would say that Tesla is that step, but we actually don't think so. I think it's the BlackBerry, because in reality, Teslas are well connected within their own world, but not to all the other cars, and it's less than 3% of the market. Big question people ask is, so what's Web3 about it? So I've made a slide specifically around that. So all of the identity of the manufacturer, the vehicle, the devices we use to connect, the credentials that you share with other developers, the actual fact that you shared and which data was shared, as well as we have several partners like Tableland and Streamer that we use for streaming data, or the definitions of what vehicles are available globally. A good way to look at it is we're enabling trusted connections between the car owner and applications that they want to use. So today, you can connect via, for example, OEM API. So we recently launched Tesla Direct Connection. Or if your car is older, you can buy one of our devices. This is one that's coming out in a couple of months. And once you have collected some data, you can use it with applications. And there's obviously some big ones around finance and vehicle sales, but they can also be fun, right? The last thing that people always think is we are aggregating the data and selling it in bundle. We're actually not. What's happening is the user is picking which data they want to share and with who. So you're able to say, I want to share just my odometer or just my speed or maybe just my battery information. So far, we've gotten around 108,000 cars connected across US, Canada, Europe, and we're trying to get to 1 million cars next year. And in a summary, what we want to do is create an open marketplace of transportation services that are built on trust and allows people to have better experiences when they're getting around. There's millions of cars out there, and they're all stuck in traffic. The way we think about reaching our goal is in a flywheel. So initially, we're very focused on getting drivers to join. And so far, that's been going well. We've added lots of ways to connect. There's 3 hardware devices, multiple do it via software. And now we're actually focusing on the next step, which is the developers and creating applications they can use, which will then bring the next set of users and finally create the marketplace that we want to have. So just going through the steps one more time, we're building trust with the user. This is out of date. The user is building a digital twin of their car. Nothing is being shared unless they want to. And what ends up being is now they have the best representation of their vehicle that anyone's ever had. And then they want to use that data. Maybe it's with a service. Maybe it's to get a discount. Maybe it's to play a game. And this is the step we're on now, which is our operative developers, same as Steve Jobs said, I've built the hardware, I've built the SDKs. Now you can build apps without having to worry about any of the pieces. So we already have tons of users. We have SDKs in 3 languages, and it's all built on trust. So nothing is, shared without users' permission. And where we want to go, next up is that trust-based relationship and ecosystem transportation services that you can use and hopefully solve some of these really tough problems like charging, vehicle to grid communication, vehicle to stoplight communication, or even vehicle to vehicle communication. So diving into it a little bit deeper into the network stack. So there's a lot of pieces to DePIN, right? We have hardware, we have software nodes, there's smart contracts. So for any developers here, I've been mostly talking about the app side so far, but know that you can play with the smart contracts, you can play with the node, you can also play with the clients, and also just build an app. We launched our developer console a few weeks ago, so you can just sign up with your wallet and create an application that users will be able to see in the marketplace. And we've built a few APIs that make doing this very, very easy. So 2 of the main ones are really just indexing the vehicle data in S3 and vehicle data on chain. But you can look up any car with the identity API, and you can look up telemetry if you have access from that vehicle as well. If you want the data, we have that available. Charging API is coming soon. And if you want the data in trip format, that's available as well. Some examples of things that have been built that I'm really excited about, and I'll go back to my PC here for a moment. So first one is kind of a public good. There is a company or I shouldn't really say company, it's a one-man operation, but it's called Coverage Critic. And what he does is help you find a cell phone plan across different carriers. So what he came to us with is, I think they're lying, and they are. So how can I create a real map of coverage? So if you go to Coverage Critic and click on crowdsource data, you'll see the actual difference between carriers in the US today. And as you can quickly see, it's very different than what they said they cover. Next one that I'm quite a fan of is my vehicle usage report, but unfortunately I don't have a Tesla and currently it only supports EVs. But one that I can show you is something that was built in a hackathon, and it's a fun one. So internet loading. So any developer can show up and define a badge, which uses a verified credential to claim the badge. So for example, in this case, I've been to NYC, so I can get that one, visiting Detroit, or maybe going over 100 miles an hour, which is way past the speed limit. Not something we want to incentivize, but if a developer wants to make that, nothing against them. Let's see. And most recently, there's a company based in Michigan called Carvis. They're building an AI-based car mechanic, and they've integrated with DIMO after being blocked from being able to get to market for multiple years. And now you can actually go to Carvis and ask questions about your car after logging in with your DIMO account, right? So you select what data you want to share, and then you can ask whatever questions you want. All to say, these are initial examples. The ones that really excite me are ones that really touch the physical world. So recently we ran something with Helium where you could win an award for talking to the most Helium hotspots. And that's a great example of what you can do in DePIN in the physical world, right? And all of our vehicle IDs are NFTs. So if you wanted to build a car marketplace that doesn't take 30% fees, you could actually do that with the vehicle IDs themselves. And you have the whole vehicle history there as well. Going green is a big part of it. So incentivizing people to drive greener, drive safer, right? Or even maybe just a monthly pass to wash your car. Having spent some time in fleet dispatch and ride hail as well, I'm a big believer that Uber could be replaced with a set of smart contracts that operate not too differently than Uniswap. And you could have anywhere in the world the same set of principles where you request a ride into an open live bidding platform and use vehicle data to verify that all of it actually happened. Another one that I hear is quite popular in Korea is car rental for a short time. So imagine a world where your car isn't just sitting there 95% of the time, but people can rent it out, right? You can choose to say between these hours it's available for rent. They can show up, they get a digital key, they unlock the car, and they can drive. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yes, so right now it's a governance token, and we haven't taken it far past that. Yes, so as you stay connected, it's a very simple model of incentivizing user to stay connected. So as you stay connected, you earn DIMO. As you use applications or services, there's also a version of that where you get essentially a kickback for using it. It works almost like a Delta reward point for airline miles. So it's depends on yeah. I mean, so for a lot of people, they just want to know more about their car, right? It's think about Apple Fitness app on your phone, right? You it's empowering for people in our generation to be able to know more. So the initial value is in the product itself. And if you download our app, we show you far more data than the OEM would ever show you. Right. So that's step one. And I think that's important from a product market fit. You have to show value on day one. You can't hope that, the value comes later. And today, most people are finding value in their mobile app, which isn't the most important thing in the long term, but important at the beginning. Mhm. 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 It's that part's very challenging, right? Because most people don't get lost in the idea that we're solving the privacy problem. They think that we're reselling their data, but in reality, we're just letting them attach blobs of data to their car that they can then share, right? And for the developer, it's important that those blobs are standardized because otherwise they can't have the same app work with Ford and Hyundai. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So there's multiple pieces there. So every demo device goes through actual hardware validation. We partner with the same companies that OEMs use. OEMs is industry talk. Car companies use hardware audits, right? So we audit the hardware. That's the first step. Second step is it has a secure element in it. So every single piece of data is signed. Third piece is when it's actually driving, there is first proof of VIN. So there's a way to check that it's unique. Second piece is we can check whether the tower you talk to is where the car is, right? And if you haven't moved because you're plugged into a wall, you're going to be connected to one tower forever. Cell tower is this second layer of validation.
Is that part of a Helium network, or you're using?
Helium. So
And
Macaron, one of our devices, runs on Helium. So we
Yep.
use the Helium data to validate that.
Okay.
With cell towers, we use the radius authentication logs from the cell tower when your SIM connects. In the future, it's going to look much more like Helium's group of coverage, but you need to have density to do vehicle to vehicle. The best validation is this car saw this car. And then once you have a lot of them, it becomes very hard to fake. But at the moment, whenever we look at it, it's only maybe possible in New York or California, maybe like, London, Berlin. But
Are you considering Starlink coverage? Starlink satellite.
not yet. That would be very expensive, but certainly an option in the long term. I would love that. Yeah. So US, Canada, EU, and Turkey at the moment. Exactly.
So another way to look at it is DIMO could be providing the software platform that relatively commoditized transportation mechanisms, right? Is that one way to look at it?
It's a how do I put this? We've thought about calling it an operating system, but that's a very loaded term. But that is the end goal. And in reality, cars are already kind of commoditized. Just the car companies don't want to acknowledge it necessarily, right? They're all way too similar. They all look exactly the same. They all have the same exact features. What's missing is a way to build an app against any of them, right?
And so are there barriers that they can throw up that prevent this, or because you are the owner of the car, you can permission as you want? Or could Tesla, bad example, we're not allowing this data to be shared?
That's a tough challenge, and that's why we have the hardware as backup. So they could play that game, but then they're playing against their own customers. And Tesla's, I would say, one of the car companies that understands that if their cars can do more things, it makes them more valuable for the customer, right? At the end of the day, people buy a Tesla because it comes with apps, even if you're not going to use them.
Sorry, very quickly, the first group of adoption users are like, I can think of like Uber drivers will probably want to do this kind of thing right away to reduce their operating costs and get some rewards, right? Okay, so they are the biggest user right now.
There is a lot of individual car owners that, early tech adopters generally, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers. About 30% of the cars are fleet, so people that actually have to use the car for business purposes, right? So they have a strong need to know where the car is or when it's going to break because it impacts their bottom line.
Thank you.
Is it working? Yeah. So I was wondering actually, when you were like thinking back a little bit, like when you were using your first pitches to explain to people like what blockchain technology is actually, like where the benefits are, like which ones did you think were, or did you notice were like working for quote unquote non-Web3 companies, and which ones were?
What we found is focusing on the customer, the data privacy, and the interoperability are the three things that, without saying the word blockchain, make sense to people naturally, right? The trust angle as well. I would say yes. And the reason it's a governance token is at some point the OEMs will come on board. And at this point it becomes let's say, they both are important and they both need to be able to have a say in the ecosystem and how it works. But you need to have that representation, right, of the users and their interests and their data privacy rights against the automakers who want the standard too. But they obviously have other incentives. So keeping it, I don't know, democratic, I guess, is big part of the token as well. Cool. Thank you.